Reddit doctors, tell us about a patient you've encountered who had such little common sense that you were surprised they'd survived this long. What is your experience, if any? Story 1. Dialysis patient on fluid restriction comes in with severe volume overload. When asked how much water he drinks, he insists he's only drinking 8 ounces a day. The nurse pressed him a little more, and he admitted to drinking a gallon of milk a day, exceeding his 64 ounces of fluids a day. He didn't realize milk counted as fluid. Story 2. Medical social worker here. I had a patient who discovered a full prescription that someone dropped in the Walmart parking lot. As he enjoyed taking drugs, he swallowed an entire bottle of blood pressure medication and wound up passing out in the middle of crossing the street and almost got crushed to death. I talked to him about how maybe that wasn't the brightest idea. He said he just wondered what they would do, and I could tell that he'd do it again. He probably went right back to the Walmart hoping to score again. Story 3. As a paramedic, I received a call for difficulty breathing. Arrived on scene to find 52-year-old female sitting in her living room. She told me she could only breathe through one side of her nose when she woke up this morning. It is now 6 a.m. She could breathe out of both sides just fine when she went to bed last night. She demanded to be transported to the ER to find out why this one side is not working right. Story 4. I'm friends with a nutritionist at a hospital. One of the stories that stuck with me was a mid-30s construction worker just collapsed one day. His co-workers called an ambulance, and he rushed to the hospital, right? Well, they discover he's nutrient deficient like in everything. So my friend is called in and she's asking him about his diet. Well, I don't like eating breakfast, and I don't like eating then going back to work, so I don't eat lunch, and then I get home and the wife has to make dinner, so I start drinking beer, and by the time dinner is ready, I don't want to eat. Just have some more beer and go to bed. The dude was living off of nothing but beer. He couldn't remember the last time he actually ate something. Story 5. I had a patient come to me in emotional distress. He was afraid because he'd found a box of dirty used syringes on the street and used them to shoot up. He didn't know what he had contracted. I gave him reassurance. Told him we would figure out what to do no matter what the test results were. And remarkably, he came back negative for everything. It was such a relief. On the same visit when I gave him his results, I recommended that he get a tetanus shot. He looked me in the eye and refused because vaccines are dangerous and kill people. It was hard to remain professional at that moment. Story 6. Not a doctor, but worked at a urological clinic for 3-ish months. One story I heard was a guy, late 30s, early 40s, that came in on referral because his scrotum had an inflamed rash, mostly on the back of the scrotum and on his perineum. He's tried creams and oral medications and even trying different soaps and detergents, and nothing helps. Doctor examines him and is unsure but notices a bit of a smell, but being around butts and balls all day doesn't think anything of it, nose blind, and asks the guy to go ahead and get off the table and get dressed, and noticed that this guy had left a skid mark on the butcher paper that's laid over the bench. Turns out, this guy wasn't washing his ass nor really wiping, and it was causing the feces to basically be worked forward as he walked, leading to what was essentially chronic diaper rash. Story 7. I'm an optometrist in the US and have a couple of memorable ones. I had an argument with one patient who insisted that there were great healing benefits to using urine eye drops. When asked about how she got these urine eye drops, she admitted to taking them directly from the toilet and putting them straight into her eyes. My pleas for her to consider the risk of developing bacterial keratitis fell on deaf ears, still dreading the day that one returns to clinic with an infection. And if I had a nickel for every time a patient came to me approximately 6 months after taking a severe blow to the eye and losing vision, only to find that they had a total retinal detachment that they thought they could just walk off instead of seeking care, I would have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot. But it's weird that it happened twice in the 3 years I've been practicing. Story 8. Where to start? Diabetic patient who said their doctor told them that their blood sugar needs to be around 250. Like hell, the doctor said that. Guy with IBS constipation with bouts of explosive diarrhea did not understand why eating fast food for every meal was bad. There's lettuce and tomato on burgers and potatoes are a vegetable. Would not change his diet, and then got mad his IBS wasn't getting better. Lotion bathing. Not actually showering or bathing, but bathing by putting on lotion every day. Also didn't understand why we didn't recommend he stand in a stagnant lake in the middle of summer to soak his leg wounds. Same patient also refused to wash his hands. He also got blacklisted from all 4 hospital systems in the area for indecent exposure and verbally threatening staff. He could be seen in the ED, but that's it. Another patient said his doctor told him he couldn't shower or bathe. Said doctor came in and told him to shower and/or take a bath. Patient still wasn't sure. Milk made lactose intolerant symptoms better for a bit. Patent was sure their child was having an allergic reaction to Benadryl when, in fact, the child was crying because they were woken up by said parent at 3 a.m. who wanted to watch TV at a loud volume and got super cranky, as I would. I gave the Benadryl at midnight. Last one had osteomyelitis, bone infection, in a toe and needed it amputated. Went for a second opinion, which is okay, and got told the same thing but then wanted to know what his naturopath thought. Decided to use a healing mat, not sure what they're called, and ended up needing emergency surgery and lost his entire leg below the knee. Story 9. I have so many stories as a semi-doctor, dentist, but a striking case just a few weeks ago was a 40-something fellow who wondered why all of his teeth suddenly started to hurt all of the time. We talk a bit. Coincidentally, he mentions, his acid reflux has been acting up a little, but that wasn't a big concern for him. P.S. A little bit to him meant walking around for hours at night to settle his stomach if he ate dinner too late. Turns out this dude had started drinking 6 liters of seltzer water a day to try and lose weight. 6 liters every day. Yeah, buddy. Your GI tract is basically acid bubbles at this point. Your teeth are melting and your stomach is frothing over. Give your body a break and have some regular water from time to time. Story 10. Had a patient come to the ER via an ambulance. Got checked in and she asked how long the wait was for her nonsensical issue. The nurse told her 30+ min wait. This woman called another ambulance to take her to the other hospital 20 minutes away that had a shorter wait time. I was blown away. Not only at the audacity, but also that the other ambulance agreed to take her. It became an office joke. Who's driving to lunch? Take an ambulance? Story 11. Not a doctor, but I used to work at a health food store and people sure would treat me like a doctor. I had to say out loud multiple times a day, I'm not a doctor. Please consult a doctor about this. One time, a woman wanted to treat her diabetes with just cinnamon. I could not convince her that I did not know anything about the health benefits of cinnamon, nor the complexities of diabetes. One time, a man came in severely limping due to literal open sores all over his legs. I'm pretty sure I was unable to correct the look of horror on my face before he saw, and I stammered out, "Sir, can I help you?" Like I actually meant, "Sir, can I call you an ambulance?" And he said, "Nope, just here for some aloe," bought the damn aloe and left. He looked like he had been in a motorcycle wreck while wearing shorts. Another practically held me hostage to ask me about the natural lubes and how he was looking for an alternative to coconut oil and repeatedly saying it just has such good glide while holding aggressive eye contact. I'll never forget these people for as long as I live. Story 12, dentist here. In dental school, I had this patient about 18 years old or so, and she needed so many root canals and crowns. I was constantly chasing my tail because by the time I finished something, another diseased tooth issue cropped up. She didn't brush or floss despite my begging. Eventually she said, "I want to be like my grandma. She takes her teeth out at night. That looks easy. I'm kind of lazy to floss my teeth. Can you just pull all my teeth out and slap some dentures in my mouth?" The internal scream, I scrumped. Story 13. I had a patient who had no disabilities and no debilitating heart or lung disease. She lived in a 3-story house but only used the ground floor because she didn't want to climb the stairs. She slept in the living room because she didn't feel like ambulating to the bedroom. She said she hadn't climbed a flight of stairs in at least 15 years because she didn't want to, and she used a scooter wherever she went out because why would I walk when I don't technically have to? She literally avoided anything that required physical exertion, and it was purely out of laziness. I've never met another patient like that. Story 14. A farmer went into the dentist with some pain. His plaque buildup made his teeth one monolithic block like Scooby-Doo cartoon teeth. No gaps. As part of the procedure, which included extraction, his teeth were cleaned. He returned the next day in a terrible rage. "Fix my teeth! What did you do?" There was some confusion, thinking the issue was that he wanted his teeth put back in, but no. He wanted his gaps filled back in. After some yelling and crying on his part, the dentist told him the plaque would build back up in a few years of not brushing. Story 15. As a pediatrician, lots of things every day, but also I have so much empathy, because when it comes to your kids, of course you're going to worry, and logic goes out the window. Lots of ED visits for fever of 99F that improved with Tylenol, and the family waits 3 hours for me to see their healthy kid. It more makes me sad they spent their time that way, and that they were so stressed during that time. More egregious examples are the naturopath parents, not even anti-vaxxers, but the ones whose kids have horrific chronic illness such as IBD or lupus and refuse to give them Western medicine. It's enraging. Their children suffer, are in pain, and in many cases have had irreversible damage because their parents want them to drink baking soda instead of receiving life-saving medications for their systemic illnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses irk me in a similar way, especially when their babies have serious congenital anomalies, and they refuse the life-saving surgery initially unless it's bloodless, which is an entire other illogical conversation to have anyway. Story 16. This story is from my sister, who is a dentist. Her office is across the street from a retirement home, and there is one patient who arrives to his dental apps via motor wheelchair. Apparently it's super fast and she will see him zooming on the sidewalk. One day he comes in for a checkup complaining of teeth sensitivity. She asks all the triage questions, and he doesn't experience discomfort when eating, drinking, or brushing like normal PPL with sensitivity issues. He says it only happens sometimes. Sis, so when do you feel sensitivity? Patient, when I ride my wheelchair outside. Sis, do you keep your mouth open when you get around in your wheelchair? Patient, sometimes. Sis, does your teeth hurt when you ride the wheelchair indoors? Patient, no. Sis, okay, let's try to keep your mouth closed when you ride your wheelchair outside. Patient, okay, I will. Story 17. This was back when I was a med student, but I had a man come to the ED for acute abdominal pain of unknown etiology. It came on very suddenly only a few hours ago. No new meds, no significant PMH. While reviewing general history, I asked about diet. He said he's had good appetite lately, and that earlier in the day he caught and ate a squirrel. Mystery solved. Story 18. Not a doctor, but saw a video of a hairdresser who told the story of a woman who came in to get her hair bleached to blonde, natural brunette, and was complaining that no hairdresser has been able to bleach her hair correctly before, and she was happy with the results the hairdresser did. The same client called back a few weeks later saying the same thing she was complaining about was happening again, so the hairdresser told the client to come back in. The client was complaining that she could see brown at the top of her head, claiming they dyed her hair wrong. The hairdresser was like, yeah, that's where your hair is growing back in its natural color, and the client was like, no, your hair grows from the bottom. She had no idea that hair grew from the scalp. Story 19. I'm an RN in cardiology and was in a patient's room after the doctor popped in and briefly mentioned a low-salt diet as the patient was holding on to lots of fluid. After that, the doctor left and the patient was on a phone call with someone. I was just straightening up and making the bed, etc. And the patient was outlining everything the doctor said, stating, I don't even add salt to any of my food, so this is no problem. I thought this was good for them. So as I finished up and was walking out, they stopped and asked if I could pick up their order of Wingstop garlic wings they had door-dashed to the lobby. It was stunning, but also sad that the education around nutrition has failed the US, and these people genuinely don't know these things so badly that it's hurting their health to the extent that it is. Story 20. As a patient, I was drinking so much alcohol that I literally had an out-of-body experience. I saw myself laying on my bed and accepted I was dead. I woke up in an ambulance, so dehydrated that my blood could not even be drawn. I had so little iron and potassium in my body that it didn't even show up on the blood screen. Hadn't eaten solid food for like 25 days because I thought that smoothies were enough nutrients. Spent a week in the ICU. Story 21. When I was in med school on my ER rotation, the doc had me go in to get the history on a patient. I asked them what brings them into the ER, and they exclaimed, ambulance. I then asked why the ambulance brought them to the ER, and they said, because I called them. 30 minutes later, turns out he had diarrhea and didn't feel like looking for his car keys. Story 22. One of my favorite stories from my brother who works as security for a hospital. A woman arrived with her emotional support mini horse to visit a family member. She didn't understand why they wouldn't allow her and the horse up to the room, and my brother was called to escort her out. While technically not a patient, the lack of common sense is hilariously baffling. Story 23. I'm a lawyer, but I had a consultation with a potential client who was in a car accident and believed she lost her brain. Literally thought her brain was no longer in her head. I also had a postal worker who wanted to sue the post office because he was exposed to potentially toxic chemicals from a leaking package. When I asked him to describe it, he said it looked and smelled like honey. I asked what the package looked like. He said it was a can that said honey. Story 24. A dentist friend of mine would regularly fly to remote parts of Canada to help the locals with their dental care. One patient was complaining about their dentures and how they felt funny. After some initial questions, it was revealed that this person didn't take out their dentures at all. Not for sleep or cleaning, just left them in all the time. When they took the dentures out, there were honest-to-God living maggots in his rotten tooth holes. They gently removed them and made sure he understood the importance of dental care. Story 25. This is not my story, but my friend's. She works as an epidemiologist, and when patients with coronavirus came in, everything was simple. You arrived, you were treated, quarantined, and if all was well, you went home. But one case struck her. A man was brought in who looked perfectly healthy. No delirium or fever, but the opinion that he was fine changed as soon as they took his temperature. His body temperature was over 43 degrees Celsius. He was urgently and gently brought down. The only reason he survived was because of the emergency treatment he received. Normally, at that temperature, the body would literally boil inside the body. Story 26. Patient of mine does some routine blood work, and his kidney function is really low, like halfway to dialysis low. I call him to see how he is feeling and try and figure out why. I ask him if he has been drinking water fluids, and he says that he doesn't like to get up from the couch to urinate, so he stopped drinking water a few weeks back and was sipping Dr. Pepper throughout the day. He started drinking water again, and his kidney function recovered. Wasn't all that surprising that he died of COVID a few months later after refusing the vaccine. Story 27. I use a translator. I'm not a doctor, but I'll tell you my story. My friend thought doctors were liars who work for money. When she punctured her foot by stepping on a sharp nail, she did not go to the hospital. She got it on her own and did not process it because she believed, once upon a time, people survived without medicine. Over time, her wound festered and became infected. Her leg was amputated and she wears a prosthesis. Story 28. I work in a hospital in a big city and I rotate through departments and reception. This story isn't dangerous, but it is very special. One time I was working in ER check-in. Young woman, probably late high school or early college-aged, comes up, says her stomach hurts. I check her in and give her instructions. She goes and sits down. Eventually, she's called back. Whatever happens, typically they do ultrasound, pregnancy test, urinalysis, maybe a blood test. It all tends to take 2-4 hours. She leaves, and then I overhear some nurses saying that she was having menstrual cramps. She hadn't had them before and didn't think they were real. Story 29. Paramedic here. Last summer, we had a 31-year-old man call an ambulance because he was walking down a sidewalk when somebody rode their bicycle past him smoking a cigarette or something, and our PT believed he was poisoned by whatever this person was smoking while briefly riding past him. He demanded we take him to the ER. Vitally, he was more stable than me at the time and had no actual complaints, just worried he was poisoned because he didn't recognize the smell of the smoke for that brief second or two. Or he was put into the waiting room by the ER staff, and I actually saw him still waiting a few hours later when we brought someone else in. Story 16-year-old kid with his dad waited overnight to be seen in the morning in the ED for stomach pain when walking. Me at the end of a 12-hour shift examining this very well-looking kid, abdomen soft, no tenderness except directly in the umbilicus, navel, which is a bit red, odd I think, and go get a cotton bud and some lubricant jelly. Stick the lubed-up cotton bud in navel, extricate hard skin stones from the creases. Looking the dad straight in the eye, I asked, "Did nobody ever tell you to clean in there?" Embarrassed dad, unable to maintain further eye contact. Kid hops off bed and is amazed that he feels totally fine now.